As the layoffs debacle continues to unfold at ZeniMax Online Studios, one question remains and stands out above all the others. How exactly did ZOS have 213 people to spare? Hey everyone, it's Spopes. As you'll know if you've been following the channel, I've been thinking about the ZOS layoffs a lot over the last week. Amid all the doom and gloom about the game dying or going into maintenance mode, I've, for the most part, stood my ground in expecting good things from ZOS in the future. But one thing I haven't explored as much as I should is how we got to this point in the first place. So in this video, I'm going to get into how ZOS had 213 people to lay off, how this ties into the type and quality of content we've been getting out of the game for the last few years, and why I'm still hopeful for the future of the Elder Scrolls Online. Before we get into this analysis, please do like, hype, and sub, and consider upgrading your support with a membership, a merch purchase, or a donation. So first, a bit of a recap. We first learned that the layoffs at ZOS were severe and extensive when the official warn notice came out sometime last week. I think it was Thursday. This official piece of federal government reporting data told us that a whopping 213 people had been laid off at ZOS. Now, as you may remember, I originally took this news with a degree of trepidation. At the time, I was struggling to process how it was possible for the studio to lose that number of employees and still make ESO good in the future. However, things took a turn for the positive when we received a post from Baratron on the forums. This post confirmed the team is now at the size it was when Hrothgar and Somerset were released in ESO. This essentially confirmed there's no guarantee the game is going to maintenance mode anytime soon. I think it helped us all realize that 200 staff is still enough to make ESO good. This post also confirmed that Nick Giacomini, the game director, and Susan Kath, the executive producer, are hard at work on the new roadmap for when content will be released after the layoffs, even though we did subsequently learn this roadmap will not be coming out for a few weeks. So yes, 213 employees being laid off is objectively a very large number. But as the dust has had a chance to settle, I've become more and more curious how it's possible to have 400 plus employees at the studio at the same time that ESO content quality has been on a nosedive for the last few years. To help us better understand the situation, it might be helpful to look at the list of confirmed people who were laid off at the studio. Most famously, this list includes Gina Bruno and Mike Finnegan. Gina Bruno was the ESO community manager, and Mike Finnegan was the lead dungeon director. We also saw Andrus Yanez de la O be let go, who was one of the two people who designed the companion Tan Lauren. Now, as we look through this list, we do see a number of boots on the ground employees. We see concept artists, animators, environmental artists, VFX artists, writers, graphic designers, and more. But we also see appended before many of these names are words like lead and senior. Now, ironically, people with these titles were probably less essential to the continued quality of content in the game than people with simple titles like animator. That's because when you are a lead or a senior staff member, that usually means that you are in a management role. Less likely with the word senior, but definitely if you are a lead, that means you are a manager, which means you are less likely to actually be producing anything yourself, and rather you're organizing the actual creators. Now, that's not to say that a lot of these people were not performing essential roles and that the game will not be harmed with their departure. But in a lot of cases, it's very difficult to see what these people are actually doing. Like, what even is a tools software engineer? And do we really need, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 world builders? Now, interestingly, there have been a few names added to this list, including apparently the entire German Bethesda team. They were let go. But really, more than anything, as I scroll through this list, I'm seeing a lot of people doing the exact same job. So if there was redundancy at ZOS, how did we get to this point? Well, I know it's gone a ways into the rearview mirror at this point, but let's not forget about Project Blackbird. Starting all the way back in 2018, ZeniMax began to work on a new AAA IP, codenamed Project Blackbird. This is intended to be a third-person online looter shooter, placing a heavy emphasis on vertical movement, so essentially a Warframe clone. Slightly different from Warframe though, it was supposed to have a sci-fi noir aesthetic, similar to Blade Runner. So you take Blade Runner, put it in a blender with Warframe, and you get what they were making here. ZOS created a whole new satellite office to work on this property in 2020, and by 2022, the team was confirmed to have 200 people. By 2025, the game had 300 people, but then shortly after, it was canceled. And what we understood at that time was that the majority of people working on Project Blackbird were laid off. But were they? Is it not possible, in fact probable, that many of those people working at Blackbird remained as ZOS and were repurposed to ESO? Assuming that around 200 employees were still working on ESO at the time Blackbird was canceled, that would mean the studio had around 500 employees at that time. If even half of them were kept, a very large number of those employees could have been transferred over to ESO. And yes, they could have constituted a large number of the employees who were laid off now in 2026. ZOS didn't want to simply show them the door. They kept them on for a while, even though they knew this would lead to redundancy and bloat within the company. And then by the time we get to the recent round of layoffs, the studio was absolutely bloated. ZOS had been perfectly fine, well, sort of, with 200 people working on ESO ever since Blackbird spun up. Now they suddenly had a ton of people coming back from Blackbird whose roles were ultimately redundant. Project Blackbird is perhaps one of the most notable casualties of the post-pandemic gaming boom. After the government decided to lock everyone inside, for their own safety, of course, nobody had anything to do except abuse drugs and alcohol, abuse their loved ones, and hide in virtual gaming worlds. For some sectors of the gaming industry, I think there was legitimate hope this would lead to a long-term growth trend within the industry. But I think more cynical actors just decided to bank off of this temporary boom, hiring tons of people in what would ultimately prove to be an unethical manner, not really caring what happened in the future, but just trying to squeeze as much money out of the current situation as they possibly could. Kind of like all the people who took pandemic loans. It was just a free-for-all cash grab environment around the world at that point, and the gaming industry was not exempt. However, we can see from this graph alone that by 2022, the growth of the gaming industry had basically stalled. At the same time, similar amounts of money were being pumped into it, which should have been a warning sign as long as 4 years ago. Studios like ZOS kept hiring people, kept maintaining an absolutely ludicrous number of staff, and honestly, this is the expected result. Whether it was managerial bloat, harkening back to Asha Sharma's letter about the 14 layers of management at some Xbox Game Studios properties, or whether it was simple redundancy, where people brought back from Blackbird were doing the same job as other people and getting in their way. The fact remains that there were too many people at ZOS. Multiple people doing the same job, too many people on certain teams. I'm even more convinced than ever now that not only were these layoffs inevitable, but they actually could be a good thing for the Elder Scrolls Online. Let's not forget that recent ESO content has been questionable. The game has honestly been on a steady decline in terms of content quality since probably 2020 or 2021. High Isle marked the beginning of a change in the company's ethos after they started producing content like Tales of Tribute, and the absolute capstone of this trend was last year's Solstice Zone, which was so bad it was almost cringe. And now, even post-Blackbird, ZOS is creating new ESO content at a snail's pace. It's still cringe and usually awful. However you look at it, the situation still betokens there were serious issues at ZOS that ending Blackbird did not seem to fix. At this point, it's really starting to look like having too many employees at ZOS was working to the detriment of the Elder Scrolls Online. Not only were there too many cooks, but in many cases it's also looking like there were the wrong cooks. Certain members of upper management have been strongly disliked by the community for many years. Certain people have been kept on for seemingly no purpose. People who are widely detested by the community. Whether it was having too many people or the wrong people for the job, these overall staffing issues seem to be the major factors behind the game's decline over the last few years. And especially when it comes to redundancy, why the most recent content in ESO has been so lackluster. So when you see that hundreds of people have been laid off from the studio making one of your favorite games, the natural reaction is panic. That's the reaction I had, at least briefly. But the more I look at it, the more skeptical I am that the layoffs were actually a bad thing for ZOS. In the end, the number of people laid off does not matter as much as the number of people who were at the studio before. And what matters even more than the number of them is what roles those people were fulfilling and whether those roles were redundant. Also, whether they were the right people to fill those roles. So in conclusion, I would urge cautious optimism about the future of ESO. I do want to admit this is all speculation, all just analysis. I could be completely wrong. We could have an announcement tomorrow saying that ESO is being shut down, that they don't have enough staff left to make the game. But we do know there are around 200 people left at ZOS. And now that the studio isn't being split between multiple projects, now that all the redundancies that flowed into the studio post-Blackbird have seemingly been eliminated, It certainly appears that ZOS could now be the lean, mean fighting machine it needs to be to properly compete in the rapidly slimming global gaming economy and produce actually good, impressive, high-effort ESO content in the future. So in the comments, do let us know what you think about this situation. The ESO community seems to be locked in a war right now between what people are calling the doomers and the bloomers. The doomers think the game is dead, the layoffs have killed it. The bloomers think that the game might actually bloom and thrive because of the layoffs. Let us know if this analysis changed your mind in any way, what you're thinking about the future of ESO, and ultimately whether you think those 213 people laid off were actually essential or not. And before you go, please do like, hype, and subscribe. And I'd certainly appreciate it if you upgrade your support with a Spopes Army membership. I keep plans affordable, but I give out great perks. You can also show your love of Spopes to the world with the merch I have listed below the video. The full catalog is on my Fourth Wall site. And on Fourth Wall, you see a box where you can donate. Plus, remember, you can leave super thanks on YouTube to donate that way. I am so grateful for your support, but I'm even more grateful to God. So as always, we'll finish up the video with a prayer to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Lord Christ, I thank you for ESO and its community, for all the beauty the game has added to your world over the years, for bringing people together through its community to love and cherish each other. Lord, please do bless ZOS. Please let our hopes for the game come true. Please be with the staff, send down your Holy Spirit to comfort and aid them during this time of trial. And Lord, please do be with me and my community. Help me navigate this situation properly. Give me supernatural clarity and guidance. Help me discern the truth of the situation so I can make the right decisions going forward. I give you all glory, Lord Christ, for this video and for my channel. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Thanks for watching until the end. Before you go, please do like, hype, comment, and subscribe. And when you do subscribe, turn on notifications, because I'll be back soon with new content.